freaking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your mega preview pod for this week's Shriners Children's Open. It's storylines, it's best bets, it's anything else that we get into. Joining me to break it all down, Greg DuCharme is here. Greg, happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday to you, gentlemen. Lots to talk about today. Been a little, other than Ryder Cup, been a little quiet in the fall, but we have some news today, so it should be a fun thing to break down. Breaking news and history this week. Lots to talk about. Kyle Porter is also here. Hello, KP.
Yeah, I feel like how do you feel, Rick? Do you feel like you're back in the flow of just everyday life? It took me a while post Ryder Cup. One, because Ryder Cup, it's just this overwhelming wave of content and just, the whole week is like that. But then also traveling back, I feel like I'm finally like kind of dialed a little bit.
Yes, for sure. So I will tell you, so on my personal YouTube channel, I have not missed a Monday preview show in 7 years until last week. So last week was the first time in 7 years I missed the Sanderson Farms because we were traveling back.
Yeah.
So this Monday, yesterday, if you're watching this live or listening to it on Tuesday, that like jolted me right back into it. I'm like, okay, now like I feel like a real week when I get to do the Monday preview show.
Rick,
yeah.
one thing they say about YouTube, consistency is the most important thing. So make sure you work on that.
I know, my bad. That's on me.
It's like the what's the Seinfeld thing where he used to write the X in the calendar on the every day where he would write joke or he would write material.
Oh, really? I haven't heard that.
Rick had what is that 350 X's in a row.
Yeah. Now I got a blank square.
Starting over.
Just no paper chain, nothing.
It's
You're
tough.
at one.
What a failure.
I did like consider like, what if I just record like a 2-minute thing on my phone but like I felt so corny to try to keep keep the streak alive, right? That's like when they, the guys got this consecutive game streak and they sub them in with a minute to go and the fate has already been decided. It felt like that. So I just broke it.
Speaking of consecutive games, my mind went straight to Cal Ripken when you said that. Have you guys been following the baseball playoffs at all?
No.
You said yes, Rick?
I have. And also, Kyle, you're the one who told me about Baseball 100, right?
The book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I started it today. And
so good.
I'm like, baseball junkie again. Like I'm throwing right back into it.
Riding a bicycle, right? You're back on in the saddle.
Yeah, it's so good.
So the reason I brought that up is my son and I were watching, or all my kids and I were watching the Braves game last night. Did you see the way that this ended?
Yeah, I'm a Phillies guy, so that was tough for us.
An 8-5-3 double play to end a playoff game.
Never been done before.
Is that true? Is that like somebody published that?
Yeah, it's I don't know, probably like Elias or something like that. It was the first 8-5-3 double play to, I think, end any game, let alone a playoff game.
It was the funniest. We went back and watched the replay. The funniest part is Harper not only trying to get back, but having to hit 2 bases on his way back was incredible.
Baseball, the thing I think is so interesting, Greg, is baseball. So golf, baseball is the perfect stat sport, right? They've been playing basically the same number of games forever. You've had the same number of leagues. Yes, teams have come and gone and all that stuff, but you can compare across eras. And golf is so far away from that. But there is still things in baseball that happen almost every night that have never happened before. Just because there is so many permutations and combinations of things that could happen that in this game over 100 years old still haven't happened.
Yeah, it really is insane. And I saw that play. And while I don't really follow it, it was incredible. And you could certainly appreciate it. I mean, I almost forgot the MLB playoffs were even happening, which is too bad because I actually like watching baseball in October. And I'm not really a baseball guy. So, Yeah, maybe tonight's the night I get back into it. But you're right. It's a great stat sport.
And it's gotten more fun with, we talked about this, Rick, but how fast the games are now. Because
save the sport. Save the sport.
Yeah, you don't feel like, oh, I got to dedicate 4.5 hours to. I mean, I remember growing up, like high school and even into college, you're like, oh, Yankees Red Sox tonight. I guess I'll stay up until 1 a.m.
They would start those games at 9 Eastern, and they would be 4.5-hour games. Clay Buchholz would be eating up like 60 seconds after every single pitch. Just brutal stuff.
Clay Buchholz. What were you saying earlier about golf not having the same sort of like across era comparison? Give me more on that.
Well, I just think that golf, because guys play different numbers of events, because courses are so different from one another, there are not these milestones that other sports have. Baseball's so great at this. 200 hits in a season, 3,000 hits for a career, 500 home runs, right? These are milestones that across generations, you can see how many guys have accomplished it. No one in golf has ever been like, wow, he's in the 1,000 birdie club, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's only 2 guys in the 1,000 birdie, 100 eagle club like that. It's just, it doesn't really work that way just because of the nature of the game itself. And I wish it did, because I think that helps build history, helps build legacy, does help you compare across eras and all that stuff. But I don't know how we would actually fix something like that, or if it even needs to be fixed. But that's what I love a lot about baseball.
It's like I like that too. It's like the Acuna 40-70 club. You're like, oh, that's crazy. And I think some of what you're talking about, I was actually writing about this today, believe it or not, in Normal Sport 3. I was working on a chapter, and I was writing about how in golf, like I compared Ricky Fowler and Jonathan Bird. Like Ricky Fowler has 6 PGA Tour wins, Jonathan Bird has 5. And yet, like, no one would ever say those are the same same quality or caliber of golfers. Ricky Fowler is like so much better of a golfer than Jonathan Bird. And yet if you just look at their wins, like an alien would just say, oh, their win resumes look similar, 6 and 5, right? But in baseball, the example that I gave was Tom Glavine has 305 career wins and Randy Johnson has 302 or something. And you would say, well, over time, like they did it very differently, but they're pretty much had the same level of success. Like you can tell from the numbers. And golf is just it's so unique and weird. And I think some of it is that you're playing against the course. You're not playing against each other. And I think when you're playing against each other over time, even though nobody would say Babe Ruth would hit 60 home runs in 2023, you can still compare it because he was playing against people of the same, like at the same level of him back in 1920 or whatever. And so it's just this human on human competition, whereas golf is human against course. And that it's just so weird and different than any other sport.
You also have like a big reason why Jonathan Bird and Ricky Fowler, and I don't know the numbers, but a big part of that comparison is things like top 10 finishes.
Right.
And in baseball, you got a 50% chance of, you got 2 teams playing, right? Somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. In the game of golf, losing by 1 is a great week very often. I mean, if you kept track of the number of times that Randy Johnson lost by 1, it'd be silly. Like he almost won 700 times.
He almost won. Good job.
But like it's a great point, Greg. I think it's such a good point, and it's such a weird thing about golf but like I think the hard part is like we still don't give credit to those, or we don't give, I don't think, enough credit to the finishing second or the losing by 1 or 2. It's sometimes we still only look at the wins because we're conditioned by other sports to do that. And that's just, I think, an unreasonable and unfair way to sort of evaluate golf.
It's a hard thing to do because they're also, each week is a championship. It's almost like each week is a season where you come in second in a PGA Tour event. It's a great week. You lose in the World Series. you probably had a pretty good year. Just took, 4 rounds versus 100 and 200 games, however many it takes to lose in a World Series.
That's interesting too, because other sports, you hear it a lot, especially in the NBA. It's like, okay, this team went to 3 consecutive conference finals, and it's like, okay, I get it, right? They were one of the Final 4 teams, whatever that looks like. There are, I don't want to say checkpoint, but there's ways to say it a lot easier than being like we should. Ricky Fowler's been in the final group on Sunday so many times. Like that would almost be like he got close or. It's just bizarre in golf.
Harder to quantify.
Yeah.
I think our version of that is like Ricky Fowler finished in the top 5 in all 4 majors in a year, right?
Yeah, but
which he did.
The problem is the good golf stuff, and somebody in the chat said it too. Like the one golf number that matters is like 59, right? Like sub 60. That's the one that's basically like across the board. Doesn't matter what the par was. Like if you shoot in the 50s, you did, but it doesn't happen frequently enough for it to matter. Right? Like how many guys have finished inside the top 5 at all 4 majors? How many guys have shot sub 60 rounds? The numbers are so small that it is not as enjoyable to keep track of because it's such a finite number of guys who do it.
Well, and what's weird about that is that you mentioned earlier, baseball is the perfect statistical sport, which I agree with, by the way, but golf should be. Right. Yes. It's even more statistically inclined because it's just you and the numbers.
The whole game is numbers, right? Like,
I know.
What are you putting on the scorecard? You're writing a number like that. That's the whole thing. Do you think, Kyle? Sorry, I don't want to jump in, but
no, go ahead.
Because I think if we had baseball, the history of baseball has always been kept in box scores. If we had hole by hole scoring of whatever that only goes back to 1980 officially, I think, on the PGA Tour. If we had Francis we might have it because it was a US Open, but you know what I mean? If we had how many times a guy has made 3, 4, 5 birdies in a row, all that other stuff, I think it would be more interesting. Even the good stuff that we have is at least limited.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think Justin Ray has done a good job of this, of kind of normalizing some of this stuff. Even though it's just on Twitter, you've done a good job of this with Rick Run Good. It's golf is weird because its history is very meaningful, actually. And we talk about this a lot with the major championships. And we can segue this into the OWGR discussion, but
good luck.
But it's also its history is very meaningful, but it's also not people can't tell you what the quantifiable stuff is there. People can't tell you, hey, the common fan in baseball could have told you forever what's the home run record. The common fan in golf couldn't have told you that. I don't even know if I can do it now. I think Nick Price and Greg Norman have the course record at Augusta National. Right?
I believe that's right.
I think it's them two. Maybe somebody, Spieth made a run at it. I think it's just those two. But even now, us three who are obsessed with this stuff, it's weird that we can't tell you some of these things that seem like they should have more historical weight than they do.
Final thing, Greg, and I can try to get this back to the OWGR, is the baseball, Major League Baseball. And obviously there are the Negro leagues, there's the Japanese league. There are obviously other leagues that have had their own history, but for the most part, all of the highest level of baseball has come from Major League Baseball in the last 100 years. Golf is so spread out across multiple countries, multiple tours. Then you have the majors. It is not the one entity, which is what the OWGR is trying to figure out. And they made some news today, Greg, because they announced that LIV Golf officially will not be getting official World Golf Ranking points. I can read you some of the quotes and some of the things that came out of this, but just initial reaction off the top. Were you surprised? Were you surprised that the request for OWGR points was declined?
I was surprised that news came out today. It wasn't even on my radar. I wasn't expecting a decision to be made on this. So in that essence, yes, it was surprising. But what the ruling was not surprising. I think this is, we've talked about this at length, an extremely difficult thing to weave into official world golf rankings. And, the analogy that I used early on when this discussion first started was basketball. And if the Big Ten, for instance, played 3-on-3 basketball and didn't play any other non-conference games, but wanted to be ranked with the NCAA teams, how could you compare Michigan playing 3-on-3 and only playing Big Ten teams 3-on-3? How could you compare them to Kansas, who's playing 5-on-5? And maybe that's an extreme example, but the point is you're trying to weave these together and compare scenarios and situations, which is difficult enough as it is with the number of different courses we have, the number of different players we have. So to me, I thought it would be very difficult for them to weave LIV into the world golf rankings.
OWGR Chairman Peter Dawson Kyle said, quote, "We are not at war with them. This decision is the decision not to make them eligible is not political. It is entirely technical. LIV players are self-evidently good enough to be ranked. They're just not playing in a format where they can be ranked equitably with the other 24 tours and thousands of players trying to compete on them," end quote. They did release the entire letter to Greg Norman in response to the and Gary Davidson from LIV Golf, and the OWGR board does not have an issue with size of field, number of holes played, or the absence of a cut. Peter Dawson actually said we could come up with some formula that takes all of that into account. The big concerns, and we can take these one at a time here because there's two of them. Number one is the player turnover, the pathways to access and relegation, the fact that you are basically getting the same 48 golfers in every single event for the most part, that there is not an easy qualification process. There is not a fair and equitable relegation process because there are some golfers, the captains, the big guys on contracts, who will not be relegated even if they finish dead last every single week. That was one of the bigger issues that the OWGR had with the application.
Yeah, I'm curious. Real quick, I'm curious, Greg. When you talk about 3-on-3 basketball, is that a reference to like the 54-hole thing, the no cut thing? When you talk about that, what are you referencing when you say that?
I'm referencing the no cut thing. Yes, the 54-hole thing. And I understand you can come up with a mathematical equation. The closed circuit thing is another factor in that. All these guys play the exact same golf course. They play the same schedule, I guess is the easiest way to say it, which is very different than the PGA Tour. And because they're just simply isolated, it becomes very difficult to blend them in. And I know you have a couple of LIV players in majors, and if they got world golf ranking points, you might have more. But it just seems like a challenging thing. Now, for me personally, I'm much bigger on the format. 54 holes, the team event being a factor in this, that absolutely has a factor on the competition. So I'm almost more surprised that they're lenient on the format.
Yeah.
That was a big surprise to me. The closed circuit aspect, I think, makes total sense as well. We could talk about that a little more, but yeah, I'm referring more to format than the closed circuit.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying makes sense. I would probably lean after thinking about it more and hearing just sort of some arguments on it. I sound like a judge or something. What was that judge? Beth Labson?
Freeman?
Beth Labson Freeman or something?
The GOAT.
Yeah.
She was make her in charge of golf.
She's now the new czar of golf.
Yeah, that's fine with me. She was awesome. my argument all along, and it did not originate with me. I saw someone else make it, and I was like, oh, that's the whole thing, is that you can't, whatever you want to say about LIV, you're not, whether it's LIV or whether the three of us started a league where we signed players to contracts that they can't, and I wrote a Twitter thread on this if you want to pull it up, Josh, at some point, but where Phil Mickelson can't fall out of, like, he can't play his way out of LIV. And whether you think that's a politically good thing, a politically bad thing, whatever you think about it, like, we all can agree that you're not, if you compare that to the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, any of these other tours, you're not measuring similar entities. Like, those are completely different things. Now, the flip side of this, the argument, if you scroll down a little bit, Josh, is, well, you could say kind of sponsors exemptions on the PGA Tour work similarly, right? Where you're just kind of getting a free ride for 7 events onto the PGA Tour. Or if like Ricky Fowler was in a position where he almost had to use a lifetime money exemption. He's top 50 all time on the money list. I think he's like top 10, but top 50, you get a free ride, free years worth of PGA Tour.
One time only, right? You use this, hand in this card, you don't get another chance at it.
Yeah. So you get this status for a year on the PGA Tour. And so you could say, well, that's kind of what LIV is. And those are fair arguments. I think there are conversations to be had about that. But one, sponsors exemptions are limited. You don't just get them for as long as you want. And two, you have earned the money exemption, right? Like the year's worth of status. So that's not it's not like a contract thing where Yasser could go sign me or Rick to a team, and then all of a sudden, like, we can't fall out of the league because we're on a contract. That is just such a different level of it's just such a different thing that you're measuring than the PGA Tour or European Tour. Now, the thing that sucks, Rick, and this is where sites like yours and Data Golf and other places like that, I think, benefit from today's news. And Peter Dawson said this, Dustin Johnson's one of the best players in the world. And yet the official rankings are, nobody disagrees that DJ is a great player, or Bryson or whoever. Bryson's probably a better example right now. And yet they can't rank them because those are pathways into the major championships, which that stuff matters, right? That matters from a historical perspective. And so, and so places like Rick Run Good, Data Golf, other entities like that, all of a sudden, these are the places that I'm going to rank players, because they are more inclusive if you want to just look purely at who's playing the best golf.
This is such so this application, it was in for 15 months. So obviously we have spent a lot of time and energy thinking about this and talking about this before this news came out today. And Greg, I have always, I think there are two valid arguments. That the one is that the OWGR has this requirement to, quote, protect the field, right? Talking about the 24 tours and the thousands of golfers to make sure that everybody kind of plays by similar-ish enough rules. And the other side would say, well, if you're the official World Golf Rankings, why don't you come up with a way to rank us, right? Isn't that your problem to come up with? Why is it our problem to bend to you if you're going to be the end-all, be-all official World Golf Rankings? Why aren't you coming up with a way to do this? And I think I've spent a lot of time thinking about both of them. I think I lean in defense of the field and defense of what I actually think would be worse is like the bad actors side of this. So Kyle was kind of touching on it. Like, if you were allowed to just make your own league and keep it closed and do whatever, you would see every sponsor tailor-made would have a 12-man tour that is only tailor-made athletes. They would play 6 times a year against one another, boost their OWGR points, and ensure their way into major championships. And it would be a nonstop system of that, which the bad actors would definitely be more inclined to do something like that if it was allowed. So I think I lean that it is not the OWGR's obligation to fit every single tour or player into the system. But listen, I think it's a very lively debate.
It is a lively debate. And part of that is, hey, this isn't, over, right? It's not, they can reapply, but as currently situated, it's not going to work. I think that causes a really big issue for LIV. This answer creates some real issues because of those contracts. So I'm going to be very curious to see how they kind of negotiate that. But ultimately, your responsibility and the rules that you have are in place for a reason, to prevent those bad actors. So no, it's not the job of the official World Golf Rankings to change their rules to figure out how to rank a new startup league. And even though it's Dustin Johnson and Sergio Garcia, Bryson DeChambeau, even though there are very worthy players that have gone over there, we have to measure them continuously. And if they play there for 10 years and there's no turnover year over year over year, and the turnover that there is so limited that you don't really know how to measure someone like Eugenio Chacarra, who we've really never seen outside of these small field events on LIV. How do we stack that up in the rest of the world of golf? It becomes very complicated to do. And I do think that raises some issues. So no, I don't think the OWGR has a responsibility to figure out how to rank LIV. I don't think that argument holds very much water.
I think one point of confusion that people have is, what is the purpose of the OWGR, right? I think if rickrungood.com is like, I ain't ranking LIV players, you'd be like, that's kind of dumb, Rick. Like that is, I actually think you should, because Rick's goal with rickrungood.com is statedly to rank all the best to rank all the players in the world from best to worst, or whatever. I'm not trying to like write your mission statement.
No, go on. Yeah.
Effectively.
You're hired.
Worst to best.
Or worst to best, however you want to do it. You can start with me and go down. And so that is like the purpose of places like rickrungood.com and other websites or entities like it. I think and this is maybe where the OWGR has failed a little bit in like having too broad of a mission or too broad of a like purpose. I think the OWGR's sort of mission should be to protect entrance into the major championships. And I'm sort of like making that up on the fly, but that, to me, that's a little bit of what's going on here. Is you have to look at who's in charge of the OWGR. It's all the major championship organizations. And so they're going to be incentivized to protect the integrity of, and I don't mean to sound like super high-minded, but to protect the integrity of their championships. And you start going down this path and it's like, well, yeah, of course, an organization whose stated goal is to rank all the best players in the world should cater to however leagues want to, hold their tournaments or function. But I don't really think that's what the OWGR is. And I think that there's been a lot, I think, of confusion around what the purpose of that organization actually is.
Do we want to hear their mission statement?
Yeah. Do you have it?
I have it.
Okay.
The mission of the OWGR is to administer and publish on a weekly basis a transparent, credible, and accurate ranking based on the relative performance of players participating in male-eligible golf tours worldwide. The OWGR is governed by 7 board of directors, supported by a technical committee composed of representatives from the governing bodies, major championships, and leading tours from within men's professional golf.
Yeah, I mean, the operative word there is eligible.
I was just going to say that carries the whole. They are absolutely accomplishing their mission, because that one word,
by definition,
sure that they are. Yes.
I sort of, and I would love to hear with some truth serum how they feel about whether that should be their mission statement now, because I think it's sort of been proved that like, really our mission statement is to protect the major championships. And I don't know that they would rewrite that or reframe that, but to me, that's kind of what's been proved throughout this whole process.
Greg, you mentioned the second point here, because this is something that we probably did not spend enough time talking about in the last 15 months, and actually became point B of two of 2 points of why the OWGR did not approve this request. And it is the impact of team competitions. The fact that individual and team competitions are running simultaneously created a concern for the OWGR, so much to the point that they actually listed and referenced a Sebastian Munoz quote from a LIV event earlier this year, where it was something in regards to he could have tried to win the individual event, but he instead played for a team victory for Team Torque. And that is actually in the memo from the OWGR back to LIV Golf. So imagine
Which is sick.
Munoz today, like, oh God, I'm such an idiot. Why did I say that?
But it's, it's evident, and that becomes a little bit of proof. Those situations happen everywhere and throughout. I mean, it may be a rare situation where somebody who's trying to win or not win decides to think about their team instead of the individual performance. But in this game, we're ranking players through the field. After somebody's made the cut on a PGA Tour event, the last guy to make the cut, the last place finisher on Sunday, is getting OWGR points. So at every step of the way, it matters. And when you start adding a team competition in there, players will play differently. I mean, we have this conversation all the time when it comes to handicaps. And when you're playing in a match play event and posting a score for your handicap, it doesn't make sense. Yet everybody plays match play and everybody posts their scores. It creates a real problem. And the reason is you play differently in match play than stroke play, especially in team match play than individual stroke play. You'll take on shots. Putts are conceded. The list goes on and on and on. It changes the strategy of the game. And it may not seem like a huge deal that has a major effect, but it is absolutely a factor.
Yeah, real quick, and I know we need to hit a break, Rick, but that feels like a little bit of a one-off that they just sort of kind of spiking the football a little bit, like padding their case, right? I agree with OWGR's decision. I just don't know if that is necessarily, I don't know. Guys do things, unspoken things that affect tournaments all the time, right? Like guys internally just give up or whatever. And I know that it's a little bit different, but I don't know. That felt a little bit kind of out there of like this one-off thing that might affect some of this, but probably won't affect the whole thing very much.
We're going to continue this conversation. What is next for OWGR, LIV, the framework, et cetera, et cetera? Lexi Thompson is looking to become the 7th female golfer to tee it up on the PGA Tour and try to make her first cut, the first cut by a female in over 70 years. And we've got our best bets. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
We need the sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
And we're back. In regards to the OWGR letter to LIV Golf, there was clearly a timeline and an open line of communication where they had chatted or met or had phone calls or email exchanges over the course of the last 15 months, asking for clarification and providing some feedback on how to rectify this situation. And KP, I'll bounce it back to you here because the obvious question is, what's next, right? 2 years ago, Greg Norman promised OWGR points to golfers who would come to LIV. OWGR, over the course of the past 15 months, has indeed outlined, hey, maybe if we can get some better relegation, if we can get some better player movement, if we can make sure that guys aren't exempt from being not kicked out of the league, but relegated out of the league on a meritocracy basis, maybe that's interesting. Right now, there hasn't been any tangible steps by LIV, and I think that they are a bit handcuffed, right? You can't pay someone $200 million and let him walk. So like, now what?
Yeah, I don't know, because I thought, and maybe it was a little bit of fake diplomacy, but I thought Peter Dawson was pretty diplomatic of saying like, hey, we're kind of open to this, right? But he's saying that knowing that LIV is in the position that you just described, which is untenable with the OWGR's position, right? And so it might be a little patronizing to say we're open to this, knowing that they can't do anything about it. Even if you say, because there are 4 spots of relegate, like where you can play your way into the league. I think there's 3 at this like season ending tournament, which is cool. And then 1 via the international series on the Asian tour, which Andy Ogletree
is leading.
I think he has clinched.
I think he locked it up as well.
Yeah. So there is a way to play your way in. The problem is there's only certain guys that can fall out. And so that's the part, like, even if you said, oh, well, let's open it up to 10 spots, which they theoretically could do, there's still going to be guys that can't fall out. And that's really the problem, not how many spots are open to playing your way in. And so I don't know. And I think the other side that we haven't talked about of this is like, what does this mean for the PGA Tour's deal with the Public Investment Fund, right? Because I don't know.
I don't think that deal's happening, by the way.
You're out?
I'm big out on that. I think it's donezo.
I agree. I think I agree. And the more you start to talk to people about the private equity stuff and like other entities that the tour is talking to, it's like, I don't know how confident they are in this deal getting done.
The other thing, and we can have that conversation, but Greg, on the OWGR side of things, the PGA Tour threw LIV more than a life vest by getting the framework, right? They said, come on board, we'll take you to safety. The OWGR kind of said, not yet. The PGA Tour could kind of just kill this framework deal and see if the OWGR and LIV kind of rot within. Right now, is there now a rebellion? Is there now these guys who were promised points looking around saying this is not what we expected?
Oh man, this is a hard thing.
This is Succession Golf Edition. What's
on the other side of it is so let's merge these two things together. Okay. The deal doesn't happen hypothetically. Mm-hmm. So PGA Tour and LIV are separate. There is no lawsuit, but the framework agreement is off the table. Mm-hmm. And the only reason we know litigation's over because it's over for forever, basically. So now you have one league that's not getting official World Golf Ranking points that has one thing as an advantage, and it's a lot of money. And so do they just continue to try to purchase new players from the PGA Tour? And those players they are the people who keep LIV in majors. So all of a sudden, right, if Dustin Johnson's exemptions run out, when Bryson's exemptions run out, the new guys that join, like Eugenio Chacarra or any of these U.S. amateur players that end up joining LIV, don't have any pathway into majors. So they're stuck. So you're going to have a real problem developing talent. So now you have to continue to recruit it. And will players who are, established players on the PGA Tour with major championships and resumes, but maybe nearing the tail end, does that start to be the bailout, right? Does this continue forever? And that's a not really a fun conversation to have. Because you got now again money versus history.
That sales pitch though, KP, has drastically changed in the last 2 years. The idea that Bryson and Phil and these guys had 2 years ago was, yes, we're getting a lot of money, but we are also doing something innovative and great, and we're going to grow the game, and it's going to be X, Y, and Z. And you can say all of that until when there's nothing on tape, right? And now we know what it's been for 2 years, and now the only argument to go to LIV is money. It's gonna be a harder sales pitch for these guys to keep PR on their side.
It is, but the thing that they've got going for them is that the tour has sort of normalized their the dark or bad parts of it, right? When the tour is like, oh yeah, I guess we're in. Let's do this. Let's figure something out.
Okay.
Go ahead.
How deep? Okay, let's just do it real quick. So let me preface this. I am not a global political genius. I don't know anything. Did you see that the sports organizations, the PGA Tour included, and the PGA Tour does not usually get involved in this stuff, have been releasing statements in support of Israel? Okay.
Yes.
Did you see that MBS has released a statement in support of Palestine?
Yeah.
So the PGA Tour provided cover for the sports washing, the blood money, all of that, and got through it. Right? They got through it. They said, this is going to be great. We're going to do the framework. We're going to do the merger. It's not a merger, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now they're going to have to deal with this too. Right. And whatever comes after this. And are you really going to tie yourself to the PIF? This is, talk about things that are going to become untenable extremely quickly. This would be absolutely bonkers to go through with if you are the PGA Tour and you like your existence.
I mean, yes, like, of course, right? Oh man, I mean, I think it begs the question, like, should sports organizations be releasing statements about anything political? I don't know, but in this era, in this cultural era, I guess my answer to that would be like, well, one, has the tour, like, what has been their historical position on releasing statements about cultural events to begin with?
The tour's history?
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, non-existent until like yesterday.
Right? I can't think of one.
The PGA Tour never gets involved in anything.
Wait, what did they release a statement about Israel yesterday?
They tweeted something. They tweeted out a statement of support. Did they not?
Okay. Sorry. I was misunderstanding what you were saying. I thought you were saying they haven't yet and they have to decide whether. Okay. I got you.
They already did. Yeah. So from 22 hours ago, they released, it's on the PGA Tour's Twitter account. The PGA Tour is horrified and heartbroken by this weekend's indefensible terror attacks in Israel and condemn violence in all capacities. We are praying for those wounded to recover, for the communities impacted by this devastation to rebuild, and for those mourning loved ones to heal. Greg, I think you're with me on this. The PGA Tour historically does not release any statements on anything.
I cannot think of one.
So why did
I wasn't following the PGA Tour in 2001, but I mean, this conversation, Rick, just goes down a very deep, a very dark rabbit hole. And the funny thing is, that's what LIV has done to us all along. We're talking about travesties that take place in the world, in a land far away from the United States, to an ally of the United States, and it's affecting the world of golf. It's so hard to fathom.
I guess to answer your question that I think you were going to ask is why did they make a statement?
Yeah.
my belief, and I'm obviously not the spokesperson for the tour, is that when basically every G8 country and every Western country and there's in our Western world, there is really only one obvious side to be on, right? In our society, in our Western world, I think they thought this was a layup, right? It's like, well, every G8 country has released a statement, every sports organization, I think they thought this was pretty safe to do. And then MBS kind of dunked on them 12 hours later.
Oh, he did that yesterday. He did it after the tour.
As far as I'm aware, it came out after this, because I saw the statement, and then I saw when it was like breaking news, he released it, and I was like, oh my God, they already tweeted about this.
Can you imagine showing the three of us in 2019 a clip of this conversation where we're talking about the Saudi crown prince talking about Palestine, and we're like, this is going to actually be incredibly relevant to your sport and the way you discuss it in 2023?
No,
that's preposterous. Josh, do you have the statement from MBS?
I have the quote here. So, okay. So this is via the SPA, the Saudi press agency. This is
imagine working for them.
Imagine me saying this on a golf podcast. Well, here we are. So here's the quote from Mohammed bin Salman. Quote, the kingdom continues to stand by the Palestinian people in their pursuit of their legitimate rights, striving for a dignified life, realizing their hopes and aspirations, and achieving a just and lasting peace, end quote.
And this affects where Ben Griffin plays golf in the future.
Yep. It does. I hate that it absolutely does.
It literally does.
Yes.
Which is yeah. I'm curious about where you stand on all this, Greg. And I don't know. We probably will talk more about this over the next 2 months. Everybody that I talk to is like pretty pessimistic about this, the PIF and the PGA Tour, which, to bring it back to the OWGR, which obviously means absolutely nothing in the face of a war between Palestine and Israel, but is what we're talking about today. To bring it back to the OWGR, I don't know. I think we head into the future with all this stuff still. Like, I don't think anything is really getting merged or folded in or anything like that. I think it's all systems go for all these entities for the foreseeable future. And I think that means LIV just carries on without OWGR points, which, to go back to what you said, Rick, that's a tough spot to be in when you're trying to attract, let's say, the Patrick Cantlays and Xander Schauffele's of the world. Like, those guys don't have major wins, and so they're not like DJ and Bryson sort of guaranteed these major championship starts. I mean, maybe for a little bit, right? But I don't know. Like, I think I sort of brushed off the OWGR statement today because you're kind of like, well, whatever, they're going to merge or like something. But now that I think more about it, it's like, oh, this has like real long-term implications on LIV's viability, because they're going to be unable to attract future talent that they maybe otherwise would have.
I do think it has a big effect on that, and it will certainly cost them more. And you think about the situation going on in the Middle East, not that I have any insight into what might or might not happen, but I know that when you're talking about turmoil in a region that Saudi Arabia is geographically, and I think politically as well, quite close to, those are the kind of things that sovereign nations concern themselves with, right? Wars, their peace in their nation, the interest of all of their people. And where does a golf league fit into that? I don't know. I think that's a really interesting thing, but it's certainly a risky time to make a move to join a Middle Eastern golf league when there's so much turmoil in the region. And who knows what it turns into? I have no idea what's going to, but it's a deterrent for sure. LIV is playing in Jeddah. Is that this week?
Yeah.
You know, that can't be a thing guys are really excited to go do right now. I mean, I would be very nervous about doing that personally. And maybe I'm just paranoid, but I would be nervous about it. So I'm very curious about that. I think that's a deterrent. Hopefully for the sake of our world, it's a short-term thing and it gets resolved quickly, although history would say it's probably not the case. But then you go back to OWGR stuff and the proposed deal and framework agreement, and it gets complicated. It's definitely a card in the hand of the PGA Tour. If they kind of get together, it probably eases a little bit of the burden. Maybe Jay Monahan gets back into voting. You know, like he didn't vote on this because of a conflict of interest. So maybe he is able to sway the decisions. I don't know. But I also think that the thing that was pointed out by Peter Dawson and the OWGR is kind of the one thing they can't get rid of. The one thing, if they needed to bail on the team concept to get OWGR points, it's not established enough. The brands aren't established enough. No one would miss them. We'd laugh about them. Remember when they had team names?
Cliques.
In the future. The clique, that was a golf team. You know, we would laugh about that. It's not established enough to be a thing that you can't lose. But the contracts and the players, you can't lose because it's all you got. And that is a major problem going forward as it relates to OWGR points.
Yeah.
That went longer than expected, but I think it was worth it and a valuable conversation. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to reset. We're going to talk about Lexi Thompson, the Shriners, give out our best bets, and then we're going to get out of here on a Tuesday. But first, we are going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
Wake up to football highlights and news from around the world with the one and only Morning Footy team.
Rise and shine, football fans. Welcome to Morning Footy.
Start your all-day football craze with Morning Footy, part of the all-new Golazo Network.
And we're back. Las Vegas. I was over there this morning. Course looks good. Everybody's excited. Things are happening. And Lexi Thompson will be the 7th woman to play in a PGA Tour event. KP, I don't think you were here. Can you name the other 6?
Okay. Michelle Wee.
Yes. 8 times.
Babe Zaharis.
Yes. 7 times. Most recently in 1946.
Annika.
Yep. Once. 2003.
Colonial.
Yep.
Susie Whaley.
Once. 2003.
She played at Hartford.
Too short. You're missing the most recent, and you're missing the most difficult one.
The most recent?
Yeah.
More recent than Michelle Wee?
That's how this works. Yeah. That's how the word most works.
It's
a tough one.
Lydia Ko?
No. Greg?
If you don't know it, you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
Brittany Lincecum.
Brittany Lincecum did it in 2018. She played the Barbasol.
But we did this already and all.
Yeah, but you knew it the other day too, so don't.
I knew Brittany, but I only knew 2000 and 2000s and beyond.
I don't remember that. What was the 6th one?
Shirley Spork did it in 1952. She's actually the last to the only to technically make a cut. She finished 105th. It was 71 years ago. But she technically did it. So Greg, Lexi, on a short list already, she'd be the only modern woman to make a cut if she's able to pull it off.
It would be a big feat. I mean, You remember the status of Michelle Wee West game when she was playing PGA Tour events? I mean, she was playing at an extremely high level. And I'm not saying that Lexi isn't, but I'm just pointing out the difficulty here. And this is something that we talked about yesterday, Rick. This is one of those events when scoring gets really low, where you can play some really good golf and miss a cut. It's, if we were playing one and done in a week like this, you got to be a little careful playing a star because there's a high chance of a missed cut. You could shoot 600 over the first 2 days and miss a cut. So, is the cut line the thing for Lexi to really aim for? Probably, because it makes history. But I do think it's going to be a very tall task.
Yeah, the state of the game, not particularly sharp, KP. Getting a little bit better, but she's missed a lot of cuts recently. She's been in the news. Obviously, the Solheim Cup was exciting, but she got a little short or didn't want to answer some questions that were being asked of her after some sour chips. So it's not like we haven't seen or heard from her. How do you assess what you're going to see this week from Lexi?
Yeah, the Solheim Cup thing was pretty soft. Just, I know we haven't talked about that.
It was doubly soft because she said she's not going to answer the question. Then she did answer it, which if she just would have said the answer first, there wouldn't have been a story. Or say you're not going to answer it and just don't answer it.
Yeah, the whole yeah, absolutely. The whole thing was just like, I don't know, like I think one of the best things I've heard about the coverage of like women's golf or just stuff sort of outside the mainstream of what we normally cover is like, hey, when we make fun of you or pose hard questions to you, like that's what we do on, like that's a sign. It's almost like when somebody gives you a hard time, like when they're around you or whatever, it's a sign that like you're like, this matters, Mm-hmm. And I think it's just such a weird, that whole thing was just very bizarre to me because it was like, no, this is affirmation of like the Solheim Cup matters and like this is meaningful and like your game, all that stuff. And it was like, but it was almost viewed as the opposite. Like, oh, how dare you come in here and like challenge us and make fun of me or whatever. And it's like, yo, this is what we do every single day on the men's side. And that, I don't know, that whole thing was just kind of odd. I don't know. I feel ambivalent about all this. I think that the women's game has grown, in my eyes, this is maybe a personal thing. The women's game has grown so much and is so good that it's like, I don't need Lexi to play in a men's event to like recognize how talented or like meaningful her game is and the women's sport is. Not that that's why it's being done, but I think sometimes in the past it was like this deal of, Annika playing in Colonial and it's like, oh man, like let's all pay attention to what Annika's doing. It's like I'm already paying attention to what Lexi's doing or to what Nellie's doing or what Jin Young Ko's doing or whatever. Like I see that and it's really impressive and it's really good. So I just think the crossover of it for me, this is a me take, is not as big of a deal as it used to be. It's just, it doesn't have the same kind of pop that it would have like 15 or 20 years ago.
Okay. That's fair. Now I'll have to look this up or I'll have to talk to J Ray, but this could be the first tournament ever to feature a Solheim Cupper, a Ryder Cupper, and a President's Cupper. Tom Kim, Ludwig Aberg, Nikolai Højgaard in the field. That can't have happened that much.
I would say it kind of likely is.
Right. Because the only other option would be, did Brittany Lincecum play in a Solheim Cup in 2018? And would there have been a Ryder Cupper and a President's Cupper in the Barbasol? Probably not.
Sony Open with Michelle Wee West would be I think the best possibility.
Yeah. I'd have to go look at that. But it is we were kind of talking about this yesterday, Greg. The top of the field, a lot of exciting young golfers. Ludwig in action. Tom Kim's playing great golf again. There are some outside of Lexi, there are a lot of really good stories. Also, Lexi got a featured group. Did you see the pairing she got?
It's not good.
Why?
I don't know.
Why?
I don't know.
Why?
What? Give me your Ludwig take, Rick. You saw him in Rome.
Special.
freak show.
The thing is, and Greg, you can speak to the swing better. It's just that efficiency, right? Where it's just like open the door, close the door. There is not an ounce of wasted energy. Is super, super dangerous.
It's speaking to the swing, highly efficient and robotic, I would say, and it's working. It's very much working. There's nothing wrong with that swing.
Kind of Stenson like, Greg.
You know, there are some similarities to it, similar body types. I think there are some differences. You know, Stenson had a lot of head release with his through the golf ball, which is a cool aspect of his swing. And his arms were probably a little bit lower at the top of the swing than Ludwig's. But they both have a little bit of a lateral slide early in the backswing, which is, you know, sometimes mistaken for a flaw that can be problematic. It's not problematic. There's nothing wrong with that golf swing. It's whatever he accomplishes is going to come from what he has between the ears and what he can do on the greens, which he's shown an ability to handle both of those situations already.
Circling back on this, because I can't let this go. Here are the featured groups. Okay. Akshay, JT Poston, Eric Cole. Poston, Eric Cole are two of the top 10 favorites to win. Akshay is a young, exciting player. Siwoo Kim, Cam Davis, Scott Stallings. Siwoo Kim and Cam Davis have the third shortest odds to win this, and Scott Stallings played well last week. Luke List, Nick Taylor, Tom Kim. Tom Kim, your defending champion. Luke List, your winner last week. Nick Taylor, one of the best memorable moments of last year. Lexi Thompson, your maybe biggest draw this week, or at least most unique aspect. So we're obviously going to stick her, with Ludwig or Adam Schenk or Vincent Norman or Boha. No, Kevin Roy and Trevor Werbelow. How did this happen?
I got to say, I've not ever heard of Kevin Roy.
I did not think they would put her with Ludwig because he would literally be 60 yards past her every single time, and I don't think they were going to do that to her. So I did not think we were going to get a Ludwig Lexi.
Put her with Tom Kim.
Yes, I can. This is so mind-boggling to me.
Catnip.
Well, you know, it makes you question the purpose, right? Right? We're going to have what's the motivation here? Are we going to have Lexi in this event to draw attention to the LPGA Tour, or is Lexi going to be a draw to the PGA Tour event? And in both cases, the grouping doesn't help, unless you think Lexi Thompson is such a big draw that people are going to get to know Kevin Roy and Trevor. I can't pronounce his name. Werbelow.
Yeah. But okay, if that's the case, then put her with Akshay, right? Here's like someone else you should learn more about.
You're going to want to watch this guy going forward. Then it has kind of a mutual benefit. So I don't know.
Sorry, Kevin. Sorry, Trevor. This is bizarre.
It's very strange. Unless like. Yeah, I don't get it. I would be interested to see who Annika and Michelle Wee and some of those women played with whenever they were paired in previous PGA Tour events that they played in. Maybe some of the top guys didn't want to play with her, which I don't really. Again, it's not like sometimes when this has happened in the past, it's felt like a sideshow or whatever. And this just doesn't feel like that. It feels like, oh, look, Lexi's playing in a PGA Tour event. Is there a case to be made that like some of the guys fighting for cards for next year could be like somebody who got boxed out because of this could be frustrated? Sure, I'll listen to that. But to me, it just feels very normal and not like a weird, strange thing.
I agree. All right. Sorry. That just really caught my attention. Let us do the bets here. Now, how about this? We are really coming up in the world. I've got this is a sponsored segment now. Are we making waves? So here we go. This is a best bet segment brought to you by, could be anything. You guys have no idea. FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. There they are.
Wow. I didn't. This is new.
It's new. Yeah. It's not a trickle down thing, so we don't get anything for it. But
that's fine.
Official.
That's nice. It's official. Yeah.
I'm a company man.
Yeah. Me too, for the most
Earning our pay.
For the most part.
when beneficial. Yeah,
Sure.
So if you've never seen this segment before, which is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, Josh gives us $100. We take 50 and put on a matchup, 30 on a finishing position, 10 each on two separate outrights. Let's start with the matchup. Greg, you pit two South Africans against one another, and only one is going to come out on top. Who's it going to be?
I have Christian Bezuidenhout over Garrick Higgo. Couple reasons for this. One, Garrick at the start of this season, I was very interested in, so I've been watching him closely. And I know he finished tied 16th at the Farmers, but I'm not overly impressed. The iron play, which I thought was turning around, has not. He's lost strokes approaching the green in his last three events, including both the events he's played in this year. And that T16 came largely from the greens, right? He gained 6 strokes on the greens. And although he's been a pretty good putter, I don't know if his iron play is going to hold up. And then Bezzy on the other side has been very good with the putter, but also finished tied 6th at the Sanderson Farms and gained 4 strokes approaching the green. So I'm a big fan of that. I'm also, I like the record of Christian better than Higgo here at the Shriners. Both played at once. Christian T20 last year. Garrick Higgo miscut.
Mark sent in his picks. He's going with Beau Hossler over Eric Cole. KP, you have a Canadian beating an Australian, Lucas Herbert from Australia.
That's right. Yeah, Adam Svensson. Been playing good golf. A couple top 20s in his last few starts. He hasn't played a ton. But yeah, I like him this week over Lucas Herbert.
I went with Nikolai Højgaard over Emiliano Grillo. Højgaard is an opportunities machine. Grillo's been struggling from tee to green, which is very, very rare, and he has never been able to figure it out at TPC Summerlin. Not a particularly great position to be in. Finishing positions can be anything. Top 10s, top 20s, top 30s, top 40s. We've got a pretty good collection here. KP, back to you. You went to the top of the board on a top 10. Who is it?
Yeah, I did. Cam Davis. I love the way he's been playing recently. He's somebody that I think has an opportunity to be a top 25 player in the world, depending on what rankings we're using. I don't know which ones we're going with there, but yeah, I've got him finishing in the top 10 this week.
I went with perpetual top 20 machine at TPC Summerlin. Harry Hall plays out of TPC Summerlin, plus 450. This is the best course on the schedule for him. It should be. He's unbelievably aware of how to play it, where to miss, and where not to miss. So top 20 for Harry at plus 450. Greg, this is my best bet was actually that this guy was going to be on your betting card.
Yes. We are in the desert. And when in the desert, you play the Desert Fox. Adam Hadwin, top 20, plus 170. I think it's a really strong number. And I'm looking forward to Adam Hadwin getting a great start to the year on a golf course with back-to-back top 10s and 4 total top 10s here at the Shriners. It continues this week.
Mark went with Chuck Hoffman, top 40 at plus 210. A couple of outrights. Mark went with Ludwig, 12-1. Beau Hossler, 35-1. KP, there is a little bit of crossover on your outright board. Who are your 2 picks, please?
Yeah, I've also got Ludwig, who it just is feels like is going to win soon. Based on, I mean, I didn't follow a ton of the Sanderson last week, but I saw him in the playoff, and it was like, God, he's coming off the Ryder Cup. Like he is He's a talent. He's so good. And then Aaron Rai, who has had a weird month. He almost won the BMW PGA, and then he played in I think it was France, and he lost like 10 strokes. I mean, it was like one of the worst performances I've seen so far this year. So I don't know what to expect from him, but BMW PGA field is, I would say, as good, probably better than this one. And he nearly won that, and he's 55-1. So kind of like that number.
I have Adam Svensson at 45-1, and Greg, you and I have found the same golfer at 35-1. Would you like to tell the people who it is?
Tom Hoge.
Yeah.
He's starting to get back to the Tom Hoge that we know and love, which is a great wedge player and a great iron player, and at times a good enough putter. So really like Tom Hoge. I love the fact that after Tour Championship, he went and played a couple events in Europe, keep the game sharp. I think he's going to come in rearing and ready to go and is trending towards a victory.
And your second golfer on your outright card is someone who has plenty of experience around TPC Summerlin.
Justin Suh, which means you've seen a lot of him. What I've really admired, I mean, the fingerprint on him so far is that he's a great putter, but we've seen in the two events that he's played since, the Wyndham Championship, we've seen some really good ball striking out of him, really good iron play, which was the thing that was missing from last year. So all we got to do is put the pieces together, and he may be holding a trophy.
That's right. All we got to do, put the pieces together. Now, Josh, if you don't like all of those, he gives us an extra $50 to go find anything that we want over at Fanduel Sportsbook. And Greg, I'm going to bounce it right back to you here. You've got a Desert Fox on your card, and you have another guy who has thrived not only in the desert, but specifically here in Las Vegas.
Yes, he loves the Shriners. It's Martin Laird. I got him at plus money, plus 105 for a top 40. Now, he has finished inside the top 40 for the last 5 years. He's only missed the cut twice here. He's also won here twice. He's played really, really well here at the Shriners. And recently, he's been playing pretty good golf, too. I mean, the results haven't been spectacular, but the advanced metrics have been certainly adequate. And it's a sign to me that nothing's broken, and he's coming to a place that he loves. I think you're going to see some really good golf out of Marty Laird.
The brand is strong for Mark, a top South African wager, plus 225, Christian Bezuidenhout. That was right on cue. I went with Kelly Craft. Never said that before. Top 40, plus 180. He's playing a lot better. A couple of top 25s to start his fall swing. I'm asking him to finish inside the top 40. And KP, round us out with your best bet, please.
Yeah, I'm doubling down on Adam Svensson, top 20, plus 190. Again, really good golf, hitting the ball well. Hasn't played a ton, but he's finished in the top 20, I think, in 3 in a row, or at least 2 of his last 3.
That segment, the best bets, brought to you by Fanduel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. That works. Like, you can make more money, you can make it more exciting. That's not bad. I've heard worse. That's a good one. Anything else, guys, before we get out of here? We've touched on females playing on the PGA Tour. We've touched on the war in the Middle East. We've touched on literally everything in between. Did we miss anything?
I don't think we missed much, but thoughts and prayers to everybody involved over there. Just a terrible thing. So I know we talked about it almost tongue in cheek tonight because it's on how it's going to affect the game of golf, which is the purpose of this podcast. But it's not something that we take lightly. So our thoughts and prayers are with everybody.
KP, did we miss anything?
No, well said, Greg. Yeah, excited to watch some baseball tonight with my kids.
And hockey's back, apparently. I heard. Go Knights, go! Home opener.
Oh, how about that?
Everybody,
Tis the season.
Tis the season. The F1 track is screwing everything up. It is the season. It is happening. Monday Night Football last night. This is the place to be. I'm not brought to you by Las Vegas Department of Tourism. Subscribe to us, Golf on CBS YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. If you drop us a line, a question, we will do our best to answer it in the next mailbag episode. For now, producer Josh does all the hard work behind the scenes. Thank you very much. Greg DuCharme available on Twitter at The Real GFD, Kyle Porter at Kyle Porter CBS, and you can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.